This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. Once again, I am joined by winemaker Frédéric Chaudière, who is joining us all the way from Château Pesquié in Ventoux. How are you today, sir?
Very well. Thank you very much, Jamie. Very happy to be back.
Superb. Well, thank you very much for doing this tasting with me today. Today we're going to go through the rosé and the whites of Château Pesquié. And you suggested that we start with the Terrasses rosé to begin with. So yeah, let's get going with this. Tell me a little bit about how this wine is made.
Well, it's a blend, as all the wines we're going to taste. It's a blend here of three varieties, which for the Southern Rhone and for a rosé are not going to be very surprising. Cinsault, Grenache, and Syrah. Basically, the Cinsault is 50%. It's kind of the core of that wine. The Cinsault, we talked about this variety. It's a variety we love. Big berry, thin skin, a lot of juice, little color, little alcohol, great acidity. Basically everything you want to make a great rosé. So 50% of Cinsault, 40% of Grenache, it's another key element,
Yeah.
and just 10% of Syrah. The Grenache is going to bring a bit more texture, a little bit more fruit, and to the kind of floral character of the Cinsault, and there's just a little bit of backbone brought by the Syrah, but it's a touch of it.
And how do you make this wine?
And it's a direct press, which fancy way to say that we make it like a white.
Yeah.
Really, there's really two ways to make rosé. The saigné, when you bleed, if we translate literally, a tank of red wines, and here we just press them press the grapes nearly directly after they arrive. So the color is in the skin. So the less time you leave the juice macerate with the skin, and the less color you will have. And the Cinsault has very little color anyway. So that's you get a profile that is somehow a crossroad between Provence and Southern Rhone. We're closer, I think, to Provence style. But in the Ventoux, we are very much in the southeast of the Rhone Valley. So we're in the middle of Provence culturally, administratively, but in terms of wine region, we're just slightly north of it, northwest of it.
Now there's a marvelous firmness, some really good acidity on this. Would you put this down to the limestone that kind of underlies so many of your vineyards?
Absolutely. This is, well, you have the general microclimate of the Ventoux, a kind of cooler climate that always helps maintaining great acidity, great balance in the wine. But here, the soils are mostly limestone with a little bit of sandy soil. So part of the Grenache and the Cinsault are on sand, which is also helping to have a kind of lighter structure, but brighter structure. But yes, overall, the limestone is the main terroir behind that wine, and helps comforting this kind of crispy side of it.
Now this is from the Terrasses range. What's the philosophy behind that level of wine in your portfolio?
Terrasses is basically another name for kind of an estate cuvée, a general photography of what we do at the estate. I mean, it's particularly true for the Terrasses Red, which is like really a collection of all our terroir. But in the case of the rosé, we would try to use, what we think overall the estates are the most interesting varieties and soil to make a rosé. So that's why we give such space to the Cinsault. But it's a level of the range where we blend terroir as well as we blend varieties. Then with Quintessence or the single vineyards cuvée, we kind of focus more on one very small, peculiar plot,
Yes.
Parcel really to really express its very strong identity.
Is rosé an important part of your portfolio, or an increasingly important part of your portfolio, I would say?
It's been increasing, but it remains. It's a bit more than 15% of our production. So it is important, of course, and I would say in 10 years it moved from 10 to 15, meaning that my parents before me were making rosé. There's a strong tradition of making rosé, but we haven't modified that much with the big rosé trend that there's now is the general part of rosé in our production. It's we were very careful about it. We're actually preparing on the 2020 vintage a new rosé, a small cuvée that will be Mourvèdre, a majority of Mourvèdre, a little bit of Cinsault, and a tiny bit of Clairette. That will be mostly fermented in a concrete egg with a little bit of foudre, 600-liter aging. So we're going to do something totally different, more colored, but overall, it's more in the whites and in the reds that lie the core of our identity.
I have to ask, with this new cuvée and the change in the cepage, what are the differences in the wine? You said color, but what about texture and weight and the like?
It's gonna be like a whole different rosé, much more gastronomical, maybe a bit more in let's say the old school philosophy of rosé. There's a large part of saignée, so not a winemaking like a white, but winemaking closer to a red.
Yeah.
And it will be indeed a rosé of texture, rosé to really have a full meal with, less just something that you sip in the sun on your terrace and that brings freshness to your day. It's something much more complex.
Now, this could be a sipping wine, but it also does have gastronomic qualities to it. There's a saline quality to it. There's that acidity, and there's just a twist of tannin from that Syrah in there, right?
It's important for us to, even in the lighter style that we make with Terrasses, to keep a complexity, a salinity, minerality that echoes to our terroir and that will be interesting to pair with food.
Superb. When people think of the Ventoux, I'm not sure they always think about white wines. So I was very happy to get a rosé and 3 whites to taste with you today. Moving along, we have another wine from the Terrasses range. This one here. This is your Terrasses Blanc, 2019 vintage. What's the story behind this one, Frédéric?
So, first of all, about the whites in the Ventoux, this is something I strongly believe in. We have the altitude, the influence of the mountain, that kind of cooler climate, the limestone. All the 3 whites we're going to taste today are all on nearly pure limestone, and all that gives to our AOC a potential of freshness that is, of course, magnified in the whites. And so the Terrasses Blanc, it's a blend also, but it will be the most complicated blend of all the wines we'll taste. It's 4 varieties. Welcome to France. You have Viognier, Roussanne, Clairette, and Grenache Blanc. And they all 4 are core varieties of the Rhône Valley. You have the 2 core varieties of the Northern Rhône, Viognier and Roussanne, and in my opinion, the 2 core varieties of the Southern Rhône, Grenache Blanc and Clairette. And they kind of all balance each other quite well in a way that there's no varietal characteristic, really. The sum of these four makes Avant whites.
But even with that much Viognier, there's no flabbiness in this wine at all. This is a very there's a certain amount of tension in this wine, right? It's incredibly well balanced. The acidity is there, and it gives the wine an amazing crispness, which I find quite surprising for 40% Viognier in wine.
I mean, again, cooler climate and limestone. It's an amazing recipe. We are also particularly careful to the picking date of the Viognier. Viognier, in a way like Roussanne, is a grape that can easily, when it goes up in maturity, suddenly become like super lush and juicy and jammy, but with that, in that moment, it also loses its acidity. And so it becomes a totally different kind of wine and a totally different kind of profile, which we are not extremely fond of. So we're always very, very careful about that date, which totally orientate, totally structure the whole blend. But we also have the claret that brings sharpness, you know. So even if there is a little bit of, if there was some richness behind the Viognier and the Roussanne, the claret brings tension, and the Grenache Blanc is also great to bring, you know, more linearity, more brightness in the blend.
Feels like you've blocked the malolactic on this completely, right? So it's
yes. As fresh our terroir is, every possibilities, every trick we have to reinforce the freshness we use. And blocking the mallow is one of them, and it will be the case in the three whites we'll taste.
Right. And this doesn't see any oak whatsoever. It's all stainless.
All stainless for both the rosé and the Terrasses Blanc. Absolutely, yeah.
And traditionally, in your part of the world, what would you be eating alongside this?
Well, we don't have lots of cheeses around here, but we have fresh goat cheese, and it usually works pretty well. It's one of the rare whites you can pair with asparagus.
Yeah.
You know, we also have a strong production locally. And then you can have, you know, I would say more like a white fish, just with a little bit of lemon and olive oil, grilled, some very simple flavor that will pair really well with the freshness and the saltiness of that white.
Lovely. Moving on to the next wine. This is a wine that's very close to your heart, I believe. This is the Cuvée Juliette. This is the 2019 vintage, once again. And there's a story behind this one, isn't there?
Yes, it's the reality is that we've been wanting to make a wine, a top white that will be an expression of claret for a long time. And with my brother Alex, we think we finally found the way. And Cuvée Juliette is a blend of 70% claret, 30% Grenache Blanc. And we were so happy with the wine that we bottled it and decided to, you know, find a name to it afterwards. And we kept on trying to find, you know, what should be the right name for it until my little daughter arrived, and actually we decided to name the wine a few weeks before she was even born. And so Juliette is the name of my daughter. My brother, well, we're two brothers on my generation with Alex. My brother already had two sons. I had one son. We thought that finally having a girl joining the family was a good reason enough to make a cuvée out of her. And so no other boys in the family has their name on the cuvée. Juliette is the privileged one.
it's a wine of amazing elegance and grace. There's a real delicacy to this wine, which I think really expresses the clairette grape. It's a grape that I think that is used as a blending agent so often. But when you see it like this, with the support from the Grenache Blanc to give it a little bit of texture in the background, it's a delicious wine, really delicious wine. Was this one that you had experimented with for a few years, or was this right?
Yeah, absolutely. This cuvée, it's most of it is fermented in a concrete egg, and well, a little bit like for the rosé I was mentioning. And there's a little bit of Grenache aged in 600 liter, and you know, Clairette is probably among the grapes we still use in the area, probably one of the most indigenous to the area.
Yes.
One of we have traces of Clairette for more than 4 or 5 centuries from that are actually really serious. It's much more than Grenache, for instance. You know, the Grenache has only been here for 2 or 3 centuries, from what we understand. Clairette has been there for longer, and I think it's really being understood and rediscovered, and it's also a variety that works particularly well with climate change. So I think we're going to see a lot more of it, and it took us a good 15 years at Pesquié, or at least for my brother and I, to understand it. But it can really bring that incredibly bright, zesty, super delicate texture and flavors that no other grapes around here can express, I think.
It's quite remarkable. Now, this would be one of your premium wines.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, the reason that we've put the Quintessence, or how do you say it in French?
Quintessence.
There you go, Quintessence. The reason we put this at the end of the lineup here is because it does have quite a bit more weight to it. There's a lot of richness in this last wine. So this is the 2019 Quintessence. Sorry, my French is a bit dodgy sometimes, Frédéric.
Totally forgiven.
Thank you. So tell us the story behind this one, because this is quite a mouthful. Quintessence,
Quintessence is a work mainly on Roussanne, which my father and my brother and I for a long time considered to be the most interesting grape in the Ventoux area, until we understood Clairette.
right.
And it's 80% of Roussanne, 20% of Clairette, also on limestones. It's a wine that provides more concentration, more roundness. You still have great freshness and that kind of salty finish that is so characteristic of the limestone and the cool climate. But with the tension, you have it's kind of slightly larger wine. There's a little bit more aging. It's very delicate and very integrated too. So it helps to build the finish, you know, rather than enlarging the mid palate or bringing any vanilla or whatever flavors. Not at all, but it outlines like the white fruit. There's a slightly spiciness with after a couple of years, you know, with some saffron, curry kind of flavors.
Is that from the Roussanne?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Interesting. It's I love the texture of this wine. I love the weight in the mouth. The mouthfeel is really very, very interesting. Of course, you have that inherent freshness of the region that you mentioned, but there's a richness here as well, which is lovely. The Roussanne, sorry, you said the Roussanne ferments in barrel, right?
Yeah, most of it. Yeah. There's part of it and part of the Clairette that remained in concrete tank, not an egg this time, yeah. Just a concrete tank and here, but most of the Roussanne is fermented in barrels, 225 and 600 both. I would say the average age of the barrels is about 3 years, maybe 4 or 19. But yeah, it helps somehow. We work with mainly with a barrel maker called Atelier Centre France, which has this great way to underline the fruit. It's somehow it's an aging that brings tension to the kind of anxiousness of the Roussanne.
Now, the last two wines, the Cuvée Juliette and the Quintessence, they're both definitely wines for the dinner table. In your region, what would you see these particular wines with? I forgot to ask you about the Juliette as we went through it.
Well, Juliette, if you have a dish that has a slightly lemon, lemon zest flavor, I don't know how you say in English, beurre blanc.
Yeah.
Kind of white sauce, buttery sauce.
Yeah, we just say beurre blanc.
Oh, okay, well then that's easy to translate. But then that has that kind of zesty side that will beautifully echoes in the wine. Might it be, I don't know if I had mentioned that when we talked the last time, but my dad is now retired, and his main activity, fortunately for the family, is basically cooking, which we think is the absolute best way for him to be retired. Yeah. And so one of his late specialty is a kind of lemon sauce chicken.
Okay.
And this works beautifully with the Cuvée Juliette. With the Quintessence Blanc, you can also be, I think, on white meat, like some chickens, but you can go maybe slightly further on the spicy side. I was mentioning curry and saffron flavors. You can, if the dishes have it in them, some curries with that would definitely work fairly well. You can also have some slightly more flavorful cheeses, like Roblochon, or I wish some more local cheeses than quoting some French ones, but that will work really well.
Well, these are 4 delicious wines. I don't usually open up four bottles of wine at 11 in the morning, but it was an absolute pleasure to do it with you today. Frédéric, we'll be joining up sometime soon to go through some red wines together, but thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today. Really appreciate your time once again.
Thank you, Jamie. See you soon.
See you soon.
Cheers.